I'd love to share with you guys today that I feel like I have lived so many different lives, even though I'm only in my middle age. I've lived in tiny towns, big cities. I've been married to my best friend since I was 22. I've mothered 4 children, 2 of whom I birthed, 2 of whom I adopted. And I've had a variety of different careers. I've trained as an elementary teacher. I fell into retail management by accident. I took a turn as a stay at home mom and eventually landed teaching middle school. But if you read my bio before I came on stage today, you'll realize that's not where I am. I am a full-time cosmetologist and I own my own private salon suite. All of these twists and turns are seemingly random, but they led me to the path I'm on today, which has given me a life of deep contentment. And a lot of those choices are purposely cultivated. So I'd like for you to come along with me today as I tell you how I learned to ask myself some really big questions that help me guide my own destiny. So the first thing a lot of people notice about me is my appearance, specifically the hair. I've gotten at least 4 comments today on it, so thank you for the many, and they were all positive, thank you. People tend to have one of 2 reactions. It tends to be, oh, I love your hair, it's so cool, or, oh, I could never be brave enough to wear my hair like that. But if you met the me of a long time ago, you would have met a very different person. I grew up in rural, conservative Western Kentucky. I had a mother who wore power suits with her matching pumps to her bank job. I had a much more traditional style, probably not what you were expecting when I walked on stage today. So here's a picture of the me of yesteryear for reference. I actually don't put a lot of stock in people's exteriors. I know that sounds odd given the work that I do, but I do think that my exterior is always a reminder to me of my own power. See, the person you see here was a full-time people pleaser. That was such an exhausting way for me to live. I was constantly in a pressure cooker, just high stakes. There was always a risk of failure. And I might have looked okay on the outside, but I was an anxious mess on the inside. If you had known me in high school, you would have met someone with a near perfect GPA, who played multiple instruments, who did volunteer work, who kept her nose clean. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, except I was running myself ragged to make those things happen. So if I ever run across a time-traveling DeLorean, I would really like to go back and have a chat with my younger self about calming the heck down. Okay, you can remove the lovely picture of me now. But then an interesting thing happened. As I grew up, as I grew as a human being, I started to put people in my life who liked me exactly as I was. They didn't want anything from me other than to just be in my orbit. And the beautiful gift of that is that it gave me a soft place to land. It gave me a way to take risk, knowing that I was still going to be unconditionally loved. And as a result of that, I learned I could start to live for myself. I started to let myself have things that I wanted. Vibrant hair, advanced degrees, highly visible tattoos, big opinions. In other words, I got to be my most audacious and unapologetically bold self. Undoubtedly, that rubs some people the wrong way, but I realize that those people aren't my people, and the unsolicited opinions of others are none of my concern. Because when I look in the mirror, what I see is a reflection of the vibrancy I feel on the inside. And it's a reminder that I am creating a life that I love. In the midst of finding all of this boldness, I was also living a full and deeply complex life. My husband and I have been raising 4 children, 2 of whom we adopted from foster care. I found myself teaching middle school, doing all this while raising 2 young ones already. Teaching middle school was not on my life bingo card, let me tell you. And it turns out, surprisingly to me, I was really good at it. And as much as people malign middle schoolers, I like those little weirdos. I like their awkwardness, I like their brutal honesty, I like their immature humor. And in fact, it's where I met our now oldest daughter. Later on, we adopted her and her brother, raising 2 young ones, and my plate kept getting more and more full by the day. It got to a point where keeping all of those plates spinning felt positively superhuman. And I started having to ask myself some very big, very scary questions. Things like, am I happy? Is it always going to feel like this? Am I always going to be this overwhelmed? What could even possibly change at this point? Because I had these questions marinating in my mind, I think my brain was constantly seeking answers. I was on Facebook scrolling one day, and I came across a teaching page that I was part of, and someone posed the question, what would you do if you weren't teaching? The answer struck me like lightning. I would want to be a hairstylist. I vividly remember sitting in the salon during a Saturday color appointment, grading papers on my day off, watching my stylist work and thinking, what must it be like to get to help people feel like their most ideal selves? And then at the end of the day, walk out the door and get to have a clear distinction between professional and personal life. The more I thought on that, the more I deeply longed for that sense of inner peace. I won't tell you that the changes in my life were instant. There were a lot of really difficult conversations being held in my household. Conversations about money, conversations about my children having to change schools, about me having to leave behind beloved friends and coworkers, conversations about facing judgment from people who did not understand the choices that I was going to make. But then I turned those voices down and I just did the damn thing. I quit teaching, I enrolled in cosmetology school, and I used all the ethos from education to become a sponge, and I soaked up every bit of knowledge I could as quickly as I could to excel in my craft. I knew going in that I was going to be a fish out of water. I turned 40 when I was in hair school. I was learning alongside classmates who were less than half my age. I was old enough to be most of their mothers. But even through that awkwardness, I still knew that the prospect of living a life stretched too thin was way worse than the prospect of being uncomfortable in reinvention. When I became apprehensive about this massive left turn that my life was taking, there was one thought that realigned my outlook really quickly. My kids were watching. My children who wholeheartedly and immediately supported my move. My children who were having to leave behind friends, beloved teachers, my children who deserved beautiful futures. Their eyes were trained on me. And if in their lives they ever got to a point where they felt stuck the way that I did, I would want them to know that they could change if they could be brave too. So in the spirit of leading from the front, I did it, and I did it scared so that I could show them the way. In my life, I have truly learned that all change is uncomfortable, even if it's for the very best of possible reasons. You could have someone who is a young adult starting their own independent life, moving out of their parents' home, and that's such an exciting time, but it comes with a risk of leaving your safety net behind. You could have someone who is in a romantic relationship, moving in with a partner. That can be such an exciting time that leads to happiness, but it's uncomfortable to meld your life with someone else's. But anything worth doing presents risk. And the trick for me is taking that leap of faith and knowing that I'm going to make choices, some of which will create peace in my life, some of which will add chaos, but I'm going to have valuable lessons in all of these things. So what did all of this change get me? Well, a lot, actually. In addition to this deep contentment, I found professional success. I found a passion for what I do. I found a more sustainable work-life balance, better personal relationships, more time with my family, and a real sense of pride in the grit that I had shown in this process. Because this uncharted journey was terrifying, and it was full of sacrifices for me and my family. But I always taught my kids that's what the definition of bravery was. It wasn't doing something when it was easy, when you knew what the outcome was going to be. It was doing something when you knew that you could very well fall on your face, but you're still going to grow and learn in that process, even if it doesn't turn out the way you want in the end. I wonder where I would be mentally, spiritually, professionally, if I hadn't had that aha moment and had the bravery to take the next steps. I have known a lot of people in my life that have fallen into the trap of complacency. People who drift on tides that other people have created for them, and they never intentionally steer their own ship. I think a lot of people during COVID started asking themselves big, important questions about what mattered to them, what were their priorities. And I don't want us to lose sight of that as a society. So I want to invite you today and challenge you to ask yourself the same questions that I wrestled with all that time ago. Are you actually happy? If not, what are you stumbling on? Are you living a life that lights you up from the inside? If not, what changes can you start to make today so that your story goes differently? I say this because I wish for each and every one of you that you get to experience the same type of deep contentment that I have. It's not enough anymore for you to just survive. I want you to thrive. I want you to do those things on purpose. Steer your ship intentionally. And to end out, I have a quote from the great Roy Kent of my favorite TV show, Ted Lasso. Don't you dare settle for fine. Thank you.